We all have that moment at the end of every summer where we get a glimpse, or in my case this morning, we get a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror and we see what our body has morphed into over the summer while we weren't looking. Summer is no doubt the busiest time for most of us during the year. We're trying to juggle work and family and friends and relationships while trying to soak up as much sun and fun and frenetic energy as possible. Usually when summer ends, I will visually take stock of the choices that I made over the previous 2 months, and I'm typically very hard on myself and very harsh with myself. My first thoughts are usually, wow, so you spent the first 7 to 8 months of the year killing yourself in the gym, being consistent with your diet and your exercise, and working hard in preparation for summer, to be summer body ready. And then the end of that 2 months, you've destroyed all of the progress you made. Gone, vanished without a trace. I've had a complicated relationship with my body and my perception of it for as long as I can remember. Like, I was the kid in high school. If I look back at any photos of me in high school and college and most of my 20s and some of my 30s, I was the guy who was in the pool or at the beach in a t-shirt, just like fully covered up, because I was so insecure about my body because I was always a little fluffier than my counterparts. All the guys around me were either really thin and slim build, or they were muscular. But I would say the hardest chapter for me and my perception of myself and my body dysmorphia was over the last 8 to 9 years. That's when it really ramped up and really exhausted itself in the form of a very aggressive eating disorder. I guess we should rewind. I've always had a very complicated relationship with food, but I was always an overeater, an emotional eater. I never really went to the gym. I tried a couple times in my 20s with friends, but the gym was like never really a motivating place for me to be. I was also an introvert, so I spent a lot of time at home by myself. And then I came out of the closet and I started going out and going to the bars, and that's kind of when the comparisons and the judgment kind of began, and I started to take more ownership over the way that I perceived and looked at my body. Like, I was very critical of it, and I was always feeling less than and not good enough, but I let all those things sit on top of me, and they really started to amplify my depression and my anxiety. But the eating disorder, and trigger warning for anybody, like, I will be talking about an eating disorder, but I know that that is a triggering word, so we will call it Ed. And we'll be talking about my life with Ed. And my life with Ed did not begin until the end of 2015. So I was 31 at the time. And the way it happened, like, I still don't really have a grasp on how it happened, or I mean, I know how it happened and why it happened in hindsight, but so long story short, the end of 2015, I made a trip with my mom to Toronto because my aunt lives there, and this is an aunt that I know, but I didn't have a close relationship with because she's lived in Toronto my whole life, and she came out to Winnipeg maybe 2 or 3 times in my childhood. So a lot of our communication and relationship was over the phone, long distance, but still somebody that I'm comfortable with and somebody that I wanted to go and spend time with. But in that trip, I was meeting 2 of my cousins, her daughters, who were grown-ups for the first time. I was meeting my mom's youngest brother, my uncle, for the first time. And I was meeting my grandpa and grandma, my mom's parents, for the first time in my life. I never spoke or saw my grandpa in my entire life before then. And my grandma, I think I spoke to maybe once on the phone. That's a whole other video and a whole other can of worms, but I was going into a very, I guess, emotionally unsafe situation for myself. I have social anxiety. I am a very shy and awkward and nervous person by nature, and so being putting myself rather into a situation like that, it was a lot, but I did it for my mom. I did it because I wanted her to have, you know, that moment and memory of, you know, at least one of her children with her parents. I also met my mom's youngest sister, her half sister, who I'd never met before. it was just, yeah, a lot of meeting new people, but you're meeting family. So there's just something in your brain that tells you this is supposed to be familiar, and this is supposed to be safe, and this is supposed to be easy and okay. And it was all of those things. Like, nothing really, I was gonna say nothing bad happened, but so nothing bad per se, but my grandfather is an old school Caribbean man, and it became very clear that he was not privy to the fact that I was gay and that I was out, because he kept asking me questions about female friends and why I didn't have a girlfriend and when I was gonna get married and have children. And that for me was very uncomfortable, because I, at that point, had been out for years, very comfortable with who I am, very proud of who I am. And so I didn't meet that moment with any kind of shame or hiding, but I also met it with the realization that I didn't really want to, I did not want to have that experience. I didn't want coming out in any way to be part of that experience. A, because I already done it and I do not feel like I need to do it again. B, yes, this is my grandfather, but it's a new person in my life and I don't owe them that information. And C, he is older, old school, and there was no point. I didn't want to do it, and I didn't feel like I had to. But it did make it awkward, because by making that choice, I was putting myself in a position to kind of to dim myself in a way, and it just put me mentally back into the space I had been in all my life, where although I saw no problem or shame in who I was, and that part of me, knowing that there's a chance that it could be received poorly if I divulged it, that it made it easy. I literally haven't talked about this since it happened, almost a decade ago, so words are hard right now. Being in a new environment with brand new people, and it was also strange witnessing my mom as a daughter and as a sister. These are spaces I had not seen her occupy in my entire life. To me, she was just always mom, and so being confronted with her humanness in that way was also, a challenge, a positive challenge, but a challenge. And I just think all of that swarmed together became too much, it became a lot, and I also wasn't sleeping. It was the first time in my life I had experienced jet lag, so I was in a state. This is my long-winded way of saying that trip is when it was the first time that I intentionally made myself throw up. I do not remember the circumstances, if I had eaten dinner and I was full and feeling uncomfortable that way, times with the feeling uncomfortable emotionally and mentally all together. But I just remember feeling very uncomfortable, and I went up to the bathroom and I threw up. And I just remember this feeling, this like beautiful, I hate to say, beautiful sense of relief from doing that. And that was the first time it happened. And then anytime that trip that I would feel uncomfortable, I would just go and I would do that, because I remembered like what that feeling felt like. And at the time, and for a long time after that, I didn't really clock that I was in the throes of an eating disorder, or that I was creating a problematic relationship with food and eating in my body. It just, for my brain, it was just like, this makes you feel better, this makes you feel in control, this makes you feel like you have a handle on something. Because at that time, I had no control over anything that was going on. I was not in my city, I was not in my home. And then slowly over time, it just became habit. And before I knew it, I was in an almost decade-long battle with my brain and my body, struggling with binging and purging. In the very beginning, it was, I'm not gonna lie, once I started to see my body change, because like I said, I've always been the fluffier one. So once I started to see my body slim down and people were making comments about how thin I looked and how good I looked, like that started to feed into my ego, and it, to my brain, it was like, oh, you're doing a good thing. This is a positive thing because you're getting positive feedback from it. So this can't be negative. So I just kept doing it. And after a while, those effects plateaued and I even started gaining weight again. But at that point, it was such a normal and regular part of my routine that I couldn't stop and break the cycle anymore. And I tried many times over the years and was successful for a month here or a few months there, but inevitably, anytime something in my world would fall apart or become hard or become inconsistent, I would fall back into that pattern as a way to regain control over something in my life. I didn't talk about this with anybody as it was happening. I talked to my best friend about it last year. It was the first time I mentioned it to her. So by choice, I went through the whole thing by myself, unsupported, which is, par for the course for me. I feel like I can do everything by myself, which is so not true and not healthy. But last year, the end of February, my friend Judy passed away, and that death really had a very big impact on me, and was a very difficult moment for me to try and navigate. And out of respect for her and the loss of that life, I decided to take a positive ownership over mine, and I said I was done. And March of 2024, the 1st of March, I remember I was like, this is over, this is done. And thankfully, it's been well over a year and I haven't had a relapse. Not saying it could never happen again. I pray and hope that it doesn't, because I really like this version of me. I really like being in control of my body in a healthy way. I started going to the gym before I stopped, well over a year before, but it was not a really consistent habit, and I was going to the gym purely for vanity reasons. And so I was doing that, but not seeing results because I was still in the throes of ed. Like, my body wasn't changing and I wasn't getting out of it what I wanted to get out of it. I have some changes in my body and really focus on a task and focus on completing it. And I will tell you that it took about 2 years. This year, after I turned 41, something happened and a switch flipped, and I stopped villainizing the gym as much as I do. Because up until then, it was like pulling teeth. Every single day, did not want to go to the gym. When I was at the gym, I was actively thinking about how long it was going to be until I was done and I can get out of here. And it was just it became such a pointless and needlessly frustrating task. I'm rambling. Again, I haven't spoken about this, so please bear with me. But what I am trying to say is,